good to go. I will call the meeting to order. And I'll start by asking Councillor Brown to introduce herself since she's here remotely.
Hi, Carrie Brown, District 3.
All right, thank you. Let's take a minute to pull the agenda up. It's not, it's a straightforward agenda tonight, but seem to be having trouble logging on to the city's webpage today. Does somebody have a hard copy because I'm not here? Oh. Thank you. All right, thank you. Now, to get started, I want to mention a little bit about meeting logistics. Anyone who's joining remotely, would ask you to change your name display on your screen to be your first and last name, so we know who we're talking to. Anyone who speaks, we'd ask you to start by stating your name and where you live. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, although we may have allow some flexibility for that for tonight's public hearing. Anyone who's here to speak about a specific agenda item, please keep your comments to that item. Anyone who wishes to speak must be called on by the mayor. And once you're called upon, you may make a statement, ask a question. But if you go on too long, discuss non-germane topics, you may be interrupted and asked to come back into compliance. Starting out is to approve the agenda. Is everybody satisfied with the agenda as presented? All right, we will consider the agenda approved. Next up, we have general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes, and we'll start. I don't see any hands raised online yet, so we'll start with people in the room. Is there anyone in the room would like to be recognized? Steve, and then the gentleman in the back. So Steve. Okay, come on up, sir.
Take one and go. Thank you.
Some of this overlaps a little with later in the agenda, but this is high level stuff. Last Friday, there was a huge vomit in the alley between Bear Pond and Bohemian Bakery. But I learned from emailing Public Works that people are on 4 10-hour days. So there's nobody to go clean that up. So I borrowed hoses from various people. It took 3 long hoses to be able to reach there from the available spigot. But that's a type of maintenance and a type of emergent. Let's call it almost an emergency type of maintenance that we should have provision for, either the fire department or somebody should be able to do that, on call because it's a health hazard. I ran into a friend today walking, she's all booted up, casted, because of the condition of the sidewalks over by Royal Orchid on Elm Street. And I had prior told you, she broke her foot walking on our sidewalks because of the condition of our sidewalk. And I've mentioned before that an elderly woman with a walker from Spring Street to Main to State took an hour and a quarter, or hour and a half because of the condition. And I walked it, I went and re-walked it to see what it was like, imagining that I was relying on a stroller. So this maintenance thing will come up in the context of the plan, but I just think that we need to have a way to get the garbage emptied before it's flowing over onto the sidewalk, to get the health hazards cleaned up. Well, I wasn't too prepared for the general businesses because I've been preparing all day for the plan. Oh, the drains. Again, we had heavy rain on the weekends. There was over a foot of water at Elm, not at Elm, at School and Main. There was 10 inches of water at Loomis and School. Basically, our drains were all clogged and we had made no provision for getting them cleared, even though we knew there was heavy rain coming. So all of those drains, volunteers came out and cleaned the drains, but you know, sticking your hands blindly into storm drains, not knowing what you're going to grab hold of, is not something that you should rely on volunteers for. So those were the three things that were most immediate that I thought needed your attention. But again, when things get, you know, Bill Frazier's classic arm, reach out, write it down, and nothing ever happens. I believe there should be a spreadsheet of these issues that are raised in public comment that's available to the public online. And then who is it assigned to? When was the complaint made? Who is it assigned to? When is it going to get addressed? It's been completed. But basically be an audit trail. So there's some accountability in this, you know, it's not rocket science.
Thanks, Steve. I'll point out that today, a press release went out about the flash flood and its aftermath, and the Department of Public Works will be completing roadside repairs, removing gravel from driveways within the public right-of-way, and clearing storm structures and culverts. There's a long list of impacted areas that are known, so it'll take a couple of weeks to make that happen, but the Department of Public Works is aware of this. Sir in the back, do you want to come up next?
Absolutely.
Hello, my name is Jacob Surgeon. I live at 14 Franklin Street for the moment. I'm here again with an escalation again, that now apparently I'm the criminal. That I was, once again, my family was harassed by Elliot Curtin, who again owns a business or lives at in the vicinity of Warm on the backside here. That again, he harassed us again. And I stood in front of his car because I was hoping we weren't on his property. Once again, maybe the police would come and help me. Nope, I'm the criminal for stopping traffic. And I may be, but I can at least prove selective enforcement. But apparently I'm not, I'm being a little too polite and callous. Why don't I say it a little bit firmer? He's a human trafficker. He is. We all know he is. Because I know because I was friends with a lot of his workers. That there's still people who work right down here at the gas station, the Spanish themed gas station, that know people, that he moves people around. There's a guy who quote unquote lives in the apartment upstairs above me. He now lives in Burlington. That I believe somebody was just talking about ICE and this, that you can't, Mayor, that you can't keep claiming that you didn't know after investigation. There's escalation, another thing too, the Center of Independent Living did its own investigation because other people were complaining, for lack of a better word. Again, not on their own behalf, even though he went out into the town and accosted people. Apparently, this one lady 5 separate times that she put in actual like complaints to her job, not for her own safety, but for Ralph's, because he got told what to do and he did not like it. That this is 100% a retaliation that he's using the police. And I know they know him because both officers came up and greeted him by name. That I am sorry that you guys condone this. You all condone this. You all know it. You can't keep hiding behind you didn't know because I've been here a couple times now. It's going to keep escalating. And again, I'm not going to hold the dogs back. I have been talking to people. I have to this, and they are very interested in little Montpelier. That you guys are connected to a few more things than you are willing to admit to, Mayor. And you guys want to be connected to these people. You know, that he and these police officers go to that weird church on Saturday that we all know. That I can't tell you, because I've been protesting, I can't tell you the amount of homeless people that come up and thank me and for being a hero, me, little white trash me, thank them for being a hero. Because specifically Officer Matthews has again, nobody wants to say she has, complaints, but she does. We want to admit it. I feel like I'm running along, but they are 100 afraid of retaliation. They're not, on the streets, the only thing you have is your health, that they don't want their legs broken, that they don't want to this, and they certainly don't want to be accosted. One of my friends, Randy, he hangs out in front of the church, that he had rocks thrown at him and he is, let's face it, a little adult. And he pulled out a hatchet and threw it at somebody randomly and it happened to hit somebody. That maybe he might get his day in court, but maybe this. But like, there's something sneaking here in Montpelier, Vermont, and you guys are connected to it, whether you want to admit it or not.
Sir, I'll just remind you that you have been informed of the grievance policy within the police department if you want to pursue it. Anybody else in the room?
45 days. It won't take a complaint after 45 days.
Ma'am, if you would like to speak, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else in the room who'd like to be heard? I do not see anybody online who's seeking to be recognized. So we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
There are no liquor licenses on there, but there will be a lot next week.
Okay, so the only thing we have on for tonight is the approval of the cruiser purchase. Is there a motion to approve that?
I will move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Next, we have the first public hearing on the city plan. Mike, you're up here, and while you're making your way up, I will open the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike Miller, I'm the planning director for the city. And I just wanted to run through a quick presentation, a little video in it. And I'm not expecting it to take long because this is really more about hearing from the public than it is hearing about me, but we do want to kind of level set everything, make sure everybody's on the same page. So really quickly, I'm going to go through a couple of items. This should take maybe 10 minutes about where to find the plan. I'll show a quick video. This is the video that's online. We can decide if people don't necessarily want to view it. We can or can't. But I think it helps to give an overview of the plan itself and how to navigate it and some of the different tools that it has. And then we'll go through a quick history, summarize the 12 story maps and the implementation plans, and talk a little bit about next steps. So if anyone is online or here and is looking for the plan, if you go to the City of Montpelier website and you scroll down a little bit, we have a box that shows popular links. And in the bottom left, there is a quick link to the City Plan 2025. And if you go a little bit farther down, we also have what we call the tiles. And if you hit the carrots on the left or right, you can change these. And one of them is also a link to the city plan. And there's a third link if you happen to go to the Planning Commission page, go to the boards and commissions, go to Planning Commission, there's another link there. So and let me see if we can make this work. It just comes through on this one. Last time it had issues. Now you see it. That's what. All right.
Hello and welcome to the Montpelier City Plan 2025. This plan is different from previous plans in that it is a web-based plan. There is not a paper plan officially, although later we will show you where you can find a printable, archived version if that is easier for you to review. Because this plan is in a new format, we wanted to take a minute to tell you how to find what you're looking for. This video will give you some tips on how to navigate the city plan and interact with the storyboards. The first thing to note is that you are on the Welcome page. You will notice 3 tabs along the top of this page: Welcome, Plan Chapters, and Additional Resources. Also in this banner line is a search box, which you can use to help find certain topics. Let's start with this Welcome page. You can scroll down the page using the wheel on your mouse, or use the slide bar on the right side of the screen. The Welcome screen will give you some information about the city plans in general, and why they are important, and how this plan was developed. The substance of the plan is found in the second tab, the Plan Chapters tab. If you click it, it will take you here. The Montpelier City Plan 2025 has 12 chapters, each a different subject area, and they are listed here in 2 columns and include topics like housing, economic development, resilience, energy, natural resources, and community services. To find out more about natural resources, for example, you will find 2 buttons below that icon. The first is Story Map, and the second is Implementation Plan. We will touch on each of these briefly. So let's first review Story Map. Click on any of the 12 story maps, and each will have the same subheadings, which are shortcuts to jump you down in the document. Each story opens with an introduction and a plan context. This includes background information and a preview of the plan. Importantly for this format, the plan context also includes interactive maps. In this first map, you will see a presentation of the city's natural resources. If you look at the lower right corner of the map, you will see a plus and minus sign. That lets you zoom in and zoom out if you like. As you zoom in, certain features may turn on, or the resolution may improve. In this case, you will see that the parcel lines appear. Your mouse is also a hand that lets you pan across the city. Click the mouse button to grab and move, and then release at your new location. If you want to reset the map, then hit the home button. The box on the upper right lets you expand the map to cover the entire screen. When you want to return to the storyboard, hit the expand button again. If you have a particular address in mind that you want to look up, you can find it by using the box in the upper left. Just start with the address number and street. For example, we can put in 39 Main Street to find City Hall. Hit return or click the map, and the map will take you to that location. This particular plan has buttons to the right that allow you to look at specific features in the map, such as wetlands. Clicking the wetlands button resets the map to the home and shows you only that feature. Again, you can navigate the same way as before. The remaining story map has a discussion of how natural resources interact with the other chapters of this plan. This is what we called synergies. Then we have a summary of the implementation plan and a description of who is working on this topic within the city. Going back to plan chapters, we have a second button. Each chapter also has one or more implementation plans. Clicking Implementation Plan button takes us here. These boards have aspirations, which are the long-term vision for Montpelier, the goals, which break that vision into bite-sized pieces, and the very specific strategies which we intend to use to accomplish those goals. Looking more at the strategies, each strategy has a title which lets you know if this is something new or if we're continuing something that we already do. There's a description and then some basic information for that effort, including cost, priority, responsible party, and which goals this strategy is addressing. The highest priority strategies are closest to the top. Our final tab is the Additional Resources tab, which includes a downloadable PDF version of the plan. This version has a cover and table of contents and is technically an unofficial copy of the original plan, which is this website. If any discrepancy is found between the PDF and the website, it is the website that is the official version. This tab also includes links to several other plans that people may have interest in. Many of these are the building blocks of this city plan. These plans are generally housed on the official City of Montpelier website, and links are provided to that site from here. Please keep in mind that throughout this plan, all information and maps are only as accurate as the date of adoption of this plan. Any changes and updates will be reflected in future amendments to the plan. We hope you enjoy the new Montpelier City Plan 2025. If you have any difficulty navigating this plan or finding what you are looking for, please contact the Planning Department at 802-223-9506 or email at planning@montpelier-vt.org.
All right, well, I know for some of you, you've probably already seen that, but we wanted to just give everybody a refresher of what's actually in this, and it's a pretty good summary of the plan itself. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the details of it because I thought the video in 6 minutes kind of captures a lot of it. But for people who aren't familiar with the city plan and the process, a real quick history. For 50 years, this document has been referred to as the Montpelier Master Plan. So you may hear people refer to the Montpelier Master Plan. We've changed the title for a number of reasons, but technically this isn't a master plan, it's a city plan. And so we felt it was appropriate to adjust the title to accurately reflect what the document is. Our current plan was developed and adopted in 2010 and was amended in 2017. This 2025 plan is a completely new format and content. So we can't ask for a red line or what's different. Everything's different. It's a completely new format, completely new content. The process of developing this plan started in about 2016, developing goals and strategies, working with various committees. And as was pointed out in the video, this is a web-based plan format with separate chapters for each topic. That wasn't the way it was in our current plan. Current plan tended to group a lot of things together into like a built environment, stuff like that. The new format, there's also a new format for the aspirations, goals, and strategies with a goal of having a more actionable plan. And this plan will be valid for 8 years. We can always update it in the interim, but plans that are adopted are valid for 8 years, which is why our 2017 plan is expiring this year in December. So we have to make an amendment before that time. So the 12 chapters, as were mentioned, have an introduction, the plan context, and interactive maps, as the video discussed. The synergies, how this plan is related to other chapters. That's just an important piece because so many topics you really can't talk about in isolation. Where do you talk about public transportation? Is that an energy item or is that a transportation item? There's a lot of overlap within the chapters, and the Planning Commission felt it was important to have this conversation about the synergies. Then there's also an implementation summary, and this really is just meant to hit the key pieces of the implementation plan. It doesn't go through all the details, but if you want to have a general idea of what the goals are and what we're going to do about it, the implementation summary, the plan chapter, the storyboard is really meant to kind of give you that high level understanding of the 12 different subject areas, and then who's involved. If you're interested in understanding who are the players, that is also available. The implementation plan, within this plan, there are 20 implementation plan boards. There are only 12 chapters, but community services and public safety have a number of their own boards for each of the topics. There's a board for parks, there's a board for recreation, and there's a board for the senior center. So we have these different ones for those 2 chapters. As was mentioned before, each has one or more aspirations and goals, and the goals break the aspiration into pieces, and then strategies, which is how are we going to achieve those goals. And strategies include everything that we currently do, plus things that we want to do differently, or some new ideas of things that we want to do. We really, when we were working on the plan, we really wanted to make sure we cataloged everything that we were doing towards accomplishing a goal, and not just focus on what's new or what we want to change. We also wanted to recognize and record what we are doing. So in case somebody is interested, what is it that we are doing about resilience, for example? You could look and see, oh, these are a whole bunch of things we're doing, and here are a bunch of recommendations for additional things that we want to try to accomplish in the next 8 years. And it's an 8-year plan, so not everything will be done all at once. So you may look and see 20 implementation boards and a lot of things to do. Some of these are things that we already do. Some of these might be low priority items that we're doing and recommending at another time. And so next steps, people trying to figure out where we are in the process. There are a minimum of 2 required public hearings. We have scheduled them for May 21st tonight and May 28th next week. But council can have as many as they would like, as many as they need to, in order to reach a consensus as to whether or not things need to be changed. At the same time, we also have a regional approval process that is ongoing. That regional plan approval examines whether this plan meets state law. They are legal documents. They have to meet certain criteria under state law. So the city has produced a report detailing how the city plan meets that requirement, and I can provide that to folks who want it. And but it is up to the CVRPC to make that determination, and they are currently in the process of doing that review. If the council makes any changes to this document, the changes will go to the Planning Commission for review and comment. They don't get any vote on it, but it's an opportunity for them to review what changes were made and be able to give you some input on whether or not they feel that it will impact to regional approval ability, or if there was a particular reason that they chose it. But that's an opportunity, that's a requirement in statute that if there are changes, that it would go to the planning commission for review and comment. And eventually, if people want to understand how this works, it will be a vote to approve or deny by council. In other communities, other parts of the state, there may be a vote of the municipality, but it is, in this case, in the city of Montpelier, it is a vote of the council. So contact information, if you have comments, because this is not only the public hearing tonight, but at any point while the public hearing process is open, you have thoughts and comments or questions, you can direct them to your counselor. You could also send them to Evelyn Prim, and her email is there, eprim@montpelier-vt.org, or you can send it to me, Mike Miller, mmiller@montpelier-vt.org. And we forward all of the comments on to city council, so they have them. And that is it. And we'll stop sharing. And take any quick comments unless you want to go straight to public comment.
Well, I thought I would start by seeing if council members have any questions for you before we go to the public comments.
I might just have one quick question, Mike. I don't know, maybe it might be for you, Kelly. I'm just thinking about, looking at these and the different strategies that are identified. And I'm just curious about how it kind of cascades downhill towards department work plans or individual work plans. So just like for an example, in utilities and facilities, they've got create new stormwater utility, right? And the responsible party is the Department of Public Works. But like, how does that, it's an 8-year plan, right? So how does this plan that captures the long-term vision of the city or the 8-year vision of the city, how does it kind of cascade down to work plans and actually become enacted at a staff level?
Yeah, as this was being developed and considered, and we were trying to work on how we wanted to structure these implementation plans, having them eventually build into the annual strategic plans and into work plans, and also into committee plans, because a lot of these were developed working with committees and commissions. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people are on boards and they don't know what is the next thing we should be working on. Well, we've got an outline of things that could be considered for next year's projects. When we developed this, the intent was we would start to work these together. So that way it was a little bit more of an integrated process of if these are our goals and this is where we want to go, then we should at least review the city plan and these projects to identify which are the top ones that we wanted to work on, and then start building them in. Obviously, a lot of what we do are core duties and core responsibilities, but there are also a lot of specific items that we're trying to accomplish with energy goals, complete streets, housing. So the hope was that we would have some direction as to where we wanted to go, but it's going to vary from year to year. If we had developed this plan in 2022, who would have predicted in 2023 that we would have had a flood, and it kind of would have changed the dynamic. But the dynamic of what we would have in our work plan for the next year. But I think this gives us a good framework if things are moving in a regular course, that we could help to start moving these in. I would like this to be the whole purpose of us doing it in this way, was that way we don't want to have another document for the shelf. We really want this document to be more of a document that we interact more with the committees and staff, just to help give us that longer term. We're always working in the trenches, and we're got everything right here. Sometimes we need to look up and see where we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike, for the presentation. I will ask a couple questions, but they are related to each other. So first, have we measured the success of the previous plan? Is there any data? What happened? Did we succeed anything? Did we fail anywhere? So can we learn from our mistakes, or we should improve things? So is there any data, or have we do this? Second one, I will just list them, so then I will give time to you to answer all of them. Second one, I check other city plans. Some of them have numbers on it. They just like give specific, oh, we want to increase housing like every year. I'm just making up like 20 house. Some of them, they don't have any number. So is it optional? So did we choose not to put any specific number, almost like a target in our city plan? Or it's something that regional planning commission or unit, I forgot what we call, they prefer not to see any numbers, so it is okay for them. Because to me, if I don't see any specific numbers, it is really difficult to measure in couple years, right? Are we successful? How many housing unit we build, or what happened and we couldn't do it? And the third one, if you want to see some numbers or metrics, would be in the, like Ben was talking about, like departments or like working units plan or committees plan or commission plans. So what will be the strategy if you want to see some metrics and numbers? Thank you.
All right, so evaluation of the old plan. I haven't done anything now. Recently, when we were initially starting, we were trying to decide how much to try to pull forward. And this is true of a lot of communities and plans. It's one of the things I try to work with my colleagues on at other communities, is to try to get away from having a lot of policies that talk about encouraging and supporting, because they're not really action items. If you say, well, what we need to do is to support or encourage accessory apartments, well, that hasn't really set yourself up to actually build any. You've just said that's what you want. So we don't, you'll find that in our current plan, but you won't find that in this draft plan, because it's just not something that is a useful way of having a strategy. So sometimes evaluating the previous plan, there may be some things that we can go through and say we've done and accomplished, but there may be a number of them that, you know, did we encourage this or did we support that? Well, those are all going to be a little bit more difficult. But it was just, it was a different plan written in a different format. I will say we did look at the number of views online, and the number of views of the draft plan during the public hearing process exceeds the views of the existing plan over the past 4 or 5 years. So it's certainly one of the criticisms of the existing plan is it's turned into more of a shelf document, and it gets pulled down by college kids when they come in to do the various projects in town and stuff. But for the most part, it's not heavily used by staff or committees, as far as I know, because it doesn't get downloaded very often. So I think from that standpoint, that evaluation is it's not used, and our hope is that with the new format, we will have a document that's used. On the benchmarks, this was a conversation that there was a lot of conversation on by the Planning Commission as to whether or not we wanted to have benchmarks or not. And we really wanted to focus first on the aspirations, what we want as our goals, and what are we going to do about it. And if we get somewhat of a blessing that that's where we want to go, the next step logically would be, okay, now let's get some benchmarks. Because what was happening was we were spending a lot of time when we were deciding, well, do we want benchmarks? We spent a lot of time talking about, well, what would it be? How would we get that number? How would that be tracked? And at the time, we're like, well, we don't even know if City Council wants this as our goal. And we're spending meetings and meetings talking about a benchmark for a goal that we haven't really said is our goal. So the decision by the Planning Commission wasn't that we don't want benchmarks. And there were some planning commissioners that really wanted them, and some of them that were less interested in that. But our decision as the commission was we should get this approved like this. And if we want to move in that direction of getting more benchmarks, then once we know our goals, then it would make sense for us to find, and not every goal has a logical benchmark. So we really have to pick which one, and then decide what would be the appropriate benchmark to apply to that. Because not everything historic preservation wants to talk about, it's important to have the community appreciate historic buildings. We're having a hard time protecting historic buildings because in their opinion, they felt the community doesn't appreciate the value of what we have. And so we need to do a better job as Historic Preservation Commission, educating and teaching the community so that our goal as the HPC was to have the community appreciate the historic values that we have. Well, that's a very difficult thing to measure. You can't really benchmark that, but it kind of goes, so it was a bit of a pull, but I think we can in the next step as we're moving forward. And as I'll point out, this is an 8-year plan. Similar to the zoning, we adopted the zoning. Every year we come back, we update the zoning. Our thought was, as the planning commission, was that we could take a very similar approach to the city plan. That if there's an interest in doing something, the housing plan needs to be updated, or resilience. We've done all the resilience projects because the Resilience Commission is doing a great job. Let's then go back and revisit that. Or if there was a goal of the council that said we would like to have more benchmarks applied to this, and you could apply benchmarks without having them adopted into the plan too. But if we wanted them incorporated into the plan, we could move in that direction as well.
And Mike, following up on that, because I was thinking about that, because you mentioned earlier that we're adopting a city plan for 8 years, but it can be changed at any time during the 8-year period. To adopt changes for the in the interim, does it require the same process of planning commission and 2 public hearings to do that?
It does require the same number, but if we're talking about smaller bite-sized pieces, same with the zoning has to follow the same process. They have an interim process that we don't have for city plans, but if you wanted to make a change to the zoning, you have to follow the full process. But when we're doing smaller bite-sized pieces, the process goes a little bit faster because we're asking for public comment just on one chapter or one section of a chapter or one implementation board or one something. So usually the process can move along a little bit faster because we've got a narrower range of comments.
Thanks. Any other council members have any questions? Jim?
When I'm looking at this and things are in color, and I'm just going to take a statement here in red. Montpelier has a goal of creating 600 housing units over the next 8 years, most of which would be rental units. Why is that in red?
Are you looking at the storyboard?
No, I think it's probably the intro bit. It's right under where it says planning context according to the 2020 US Census.
Let's get to that real quick.
Oh gosh. 40. Just wondering why it says most would be rental units and why is it in red and what does that mean?
Probably, there we go, 2-1.
It's page 2-2.
2-2.
The hard copy.
Yeah, so page 2-2. The red is just, it's not meant to be anything other than just a change of the color as it's going through. The housing unit goal, that is what was discussed by the commission, and that's the revised number that came out of the planning hearing process. So
that red doesn't mean necessarily anything.
No, it's just that if it's on the screen, it's as the screen is scrolling. To make the paper copies, we have to cut it out of the web and insert it on paper, and we just keep it consistent. So it may look different on the paper.
Okay.
And Jim, you also had a question about why is the proposal that mostly rental housing?
Yeah, I guess who did that come from?
That's been an ongoing, I mean, again, I guess I should be clear. Everything is on the table for the council to change. If there's something that the committees, staff, the planning commission, that if anything, the council feels that isn't in accordance with what you agree with, then those are things that can be brought up and changed. That is where has been the goal because of the Washington County housing needs assessment is really looking at, we need 3,800 housing units. And we have a lot of folks who are homeless and a lot of folks that are looking for places, employers who are looking to find places for their employees to live. A lot of those fall to having additional rental units. So it's not that we don't want the owner occupied, but it's the multifamily and in particular the rental that had been identified.
And in the general split in the city, where we're now about 56% homeowners and 44% rental housing, the feeling was that the rental is where we have the most significant undersupply.
Correct.
Okay. And Adrian.
A quick process question. So for the public hearing, we'll have the public hearing today and then one next week. I have tons of questions. And so when is it appropriate? I want to hear from the public. So will there be an opportunity like at the end of the public? Like, what does that look like?
Yes, it's a good point. I'm sure you're not the only council member who has questions, and we're getting some of the high level questions. What I'm most interested in tonight, especially, is to hear from the public and see what the comments are, because we have two public hearings scheduled, but I'm also interested in and we have the ability to make changes. We can make changes as early as tonight, but it might be too big of a bite to try to start making amendments right now, but questions and concerns and comments from council would also be in order for tonight. But since we set this as a public hearing, we definitely want to hear from the public. And in general, for comments from the public, to me as a decider, and obviously anyone here, any member of the public can decide to make comment on any part of the plan that they want. To me, I think it's most useful to hear about the highest level items, the goals and the strategies, to see if people think we're on the right track in terms of what the goals should be, and a little less interested in the smaller details. But of course, people are free to make whatever comments that they want. But I think this might now be the time to open it up to public comments. We don't have a huge crowd here, and so I'll start out by saying we'll take comments 5 minutes per person and see how things go. Anthony, you're the first one with your hand up.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony Irapino, with the law firm of Wilczek Irapino Law Office at 35 Elm Street. I've had the opportunity to comment in my personal capacity when the Planning Commission did its hearings, and a number of counselors were there to hear that. So I'm not going to repeat those. In fact, tonight, instead, I'm appearing on behalf of my client, Alan Goldman, whom many of you know as a longtime citizen of Montpelier, a former planning commissioner, and the owner of some of the most iconic and important parcels in the city, including Sabin's Pasture, the Redstone Building in Crestview, Jocelyn Farm and 7 Court Street, among others. Mr. Goldman is on the Zoom tonight for medical reasons, and he has asked me to come in person to convey a few key points relative to the draft city master plan being considered this evening. Actually, you can see city master plan. Mr. Goldman's been around the city for a long time, so he's still using the old nomenclature. But First and foremost, Mr. Goldman thanks the Planning Commission volunteers, the many committees who are part of this, and the city councilor for working really hard on this plan, trying to synthesize the wishes of this vibrant community into one single document. And thank you again for fulfilling your role in the planning process and taking time to hear his concerns. So on the high level, Mr. Goldman applauds the recognition in the city plan. The city needs to add more housing. We heard specific metrics a moment ago. That's really critical to ensure the vibrancy and the sustainability of the community over time. The draft contains important provisions designed to create conditions that are more conducive to development in our downtown, in our city, as opposed to the sprawl we have seen encroach into the surrounding more rural communities where we've had scattered development in the past decades and less development here in Montpelier. To that end, one of the most significant plan recommendations is for the city to amend the Unified Development Regulations, also known as the zoning bylaws, to make them procedurally easier to navigate for those who look to help our city meet its housing challenge, and substantively more permissible to the types of development needed to add meaningful housing to the city. Mr. Goldman appreciates the fact that the planning staff and the planning commission have already actually begun the process of revisiting the regulations, and I am working with him and the planning commission to make some written recommendations there. So strongly applaud the recognition that some changes could be made to the bylaws to make things a little easier for folks who want to help the city out. Mr. Goldman also wants the council and the community to understand that he and his partner, Doug Zorzi, who I also saw is on here, not joining us in person for medical reasons, have been working earnestly for several years to execute a viable plan for the development on Sabins pasture. Achieving success on that parcel of land will require coordination and cooperation between its owners and the city. And the master plan's inclusion of Sabins pasture in the tax increment financing proposal map and in the draft plan is a positive reaffirmation in the city's interest in this coordination and cooperation. Unfortunately, there have been some stops and starts and fits and in the past. So it is also good that the plan recognizes that, quote, as the Country Club Road and Sabins pasture projects evolve, new zoning districts will be needed to connect these areas and allow these areas to grow towards each other. Currently, part of the Upper Sabins pastures is zoned rural, and that is the most restrictive zoning that we have in the city. One issue of concern to Mr. Goldman, however, is the relative disparity and emphasis between the growth at Sabins pasture parcel on the one hand and at the Country Club Road site on the other hand. The Country Club Road site is mentioned no fewer than 32 times in the city plan, while Sabins pasture is mentioned only 3 times. As the council knows, Sabins pasture is closer to our existing downtown, contiguous with several existing neighborhoods, and closer to existing utilities than the Country Club Road parcel. So developments on Sabins pasture should not be a second-tier priority. And Mr. Goldman is concerned that the disparity in emphasis between the Country Club Road site and Sabins pasture could translate into a prioritization of Sabins pasture by city staff pursuing resources to unlock the city's housing development potential, such as committing to the extension of sewer and water infrastructure farther down Berry Street to connect with all of Sabins pasture, including the land owned by Casey Ellison, as originally planned in the 2018 TIF application. So development in Sabins should not be less of a priority than development of Country Club Road when it comes to things like the capital improvement planning, which is called out as an implementation strategy in the draft city plan. Similarly, in the city's pursuit of community development block grant funds. The city plan should encourage more city cooperation with the Sabins pasture owners when it comes to facilitating new neighborhood development on this key, unique piece of Montpelier's housing puzzle. An additional concern is about the potentially unintended consequences of the language in the city plan relating to the city's green print map, and relatedly, the natural resources inventory maps. These maps are important informational tools to help educate the community about the natural assets present in Montpelier and the conservation possibilities that exist in the future. Mr. Goldman is concerned, however, that some of these maps, such as the green print map and the interior forest block map, may be misinterpreted by some who will wrongly believe or be led to believe that the areas depicted on those maps are already conserved for public use by virtue of their inclusion in the city plan, or otherwise restricted from being developed. As some community members know, Mr. Goldman owns approximately 600 acres, roughly between Route 2 and Terrace Street, commonly referred to as Crestview and the Jocelyn Farm, and much of that area appears on the green print map and on the interior forest block map. Now, Mr. Goldman gave back permits to develop that area back in the 90s, and he's kept his land open for 30 years and maintained the property organically as a natural experience for the community. He envisions creating a nature park and working organic farm there, but the key priority here to understand is it's one thing to be asked to conserve your land and dedicate it to public use, and it is another thing to be told you must do so. Now, the green print map included in the plan depicts areas identified for future parkland and trails, and most of those areas, including the area I just spoke about, are privately owned. And that's why it's important to lift up the language in the draft plan, quoting from the green print plan, that recognizes that, quote, voluntary land conservation actions will be determined by the landowner's willingness to participate in identified conservation initiatives. Mr. Goldman believes that the voluntariness of this participation cannot be sufficiently emphasized. Too often in the recent history of Montpelier have certain citizens become entrenched in the belief that their past recreational use of undeveloped private land is a perpetual entitlement that the city regulations must protect, and that citizens can vindicate through the opposition in the zoning process. The draft plan must take additional care not to foster that perception at the expense of the reality that recreational use of private land is voluntary kindness on the part of the owners, and that voluntary kindness is not forever when it's time to look at other uses of the land, such as helping the city achieve its housing goals. For that reason, it is troubling to see language elsewhere in the community service implementation plan section where the spirit of the green print plan language about voluntary landowner participation is abandoned in favor of a regulatory mandate. This appears in section or on what is page 122 if you're looking at the legacy, or 221, excuse me, if you're looking at the archival version, and it's the implementation strategy for the community services, and it's titled Amend and Continue to Administer the Unified Development Regulations. Specifically, you will see that it says, quote, regarding parks, the regulations should be amended to require private connections to trails where a residential development abuts the trail system identified in the green print. Where a future trail is anticipated in the green print, the new residential development shall, which usually means is required, reserve space for the future private connection to the city's trail network. Mr. Goldman believes that this type of mandate is working at cross purposes with the spirit of the green print plan and the more urgent goals in the draft city plan to add substantial housing units to the city's built environment. The mandatory shall language in this section should be replaced with language that encourages but does not require new development to include trail connectivity where that is feasible and where the city is willing to assume responsibility for trail maintenance. Trails are not an easy thing to build and maintain, and it's a lot to ask people in this challenging economy to both build housing and build a trail network for the city's purposes. So these kind of mandates that are in the plan do not send a welcoming signal to those private landowners who are trying to step up to help the city with their goals. So, Mr. Goldman, appreciate your consideration of these comments, and we will look to take some opportunities to provide some written suggestions in between now and the next meeting. But for tonight, thank you very much for hearing Mr. Goldman's concerns.
Thanks, Anthony. And I would definitely encourage you, if you have specific language for suggestions, to get it to us in writing.
Yeah, and I would just ask if you wouldn't mind if you have the comments that you've made tonight in writing, and appreciate those as well.
Be very happy to submit those
Thank
on
you.
Mr. Goldman's behalf. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, Sandy.
Before I start, Mayor, I heard you say we had 5 minutes, and then I thought I heard you say 3. So, but, okay, I might be able to finish in 3. Well, he was speaking for 2 people. My name is Sandra Vitztum. I live at 14 Loomis Street. Thank you for letting me speak. My comments tonight are very specific and focused on one sentence. And that sentence is the one that was already mentioned tonight. The sentence, Montpelier has a goal of creating 600 housing units over the next 8 years, comma, most of which would be rental units. I first of all want to applaud the city for doing this challenging work. I also want to point out that the storybook format, which until recently I think couldn't really make a PDF out of, is very difficult for people trying to work with that document for something like a proposal. If you're doing a development proposal, it would be nice to have some kind of mark up at the top where you could link that you could just download the whole PDF. And you may already have that on the site now, but it is incredibly hard. It's almost manipulative because you can only go through it in certain ways. It's very hard to see though. It would be like trying to understand the world through GPS, right? Like you can only see the trail that you're going down. You can't look at the rest of the area. Okay, so on this sentence, I started working on this topic. It's really been important to me for 3 years. I have interviewed dozens of people of different levels of income in town and outside of town about this question of homeownership versus rental. And my experience is that many more people would rather own than rent. And when I first saw this sentence, I asked Mike, where did it come from? What was the methodology? What were the facts behind it? And I did not know that there was a housing study, Washington County housing study, but I never got that. So it's hard. I don't know if it's actually based on facts or people's feelings of what they've noticed. Our unhoused population, it's a big problem facing Montpelier, but sometimes the true facts aren't as visible or obvious. And so I think, I believe you're doing a housing study soon, which is really important. So what I want to suggest is rather than waiting 8 years to make this change, I want to suggest that you take out everything after the comma for now. It's been discussed that you can add things back in over time. I would like to ask that you take that off and just end the sentence. Montpelier has a goal of creating 600 housing units over the next 8 years, period. And then when you have actual facts, I've shared the study and I'm happy to share it in the bathroom. I have a lot of copies. My experience from this unofficial survey is that 80% of people who would like to own. And that includes very small houses. Starter homes could be a word for that. So I would like the city to make some diligence. Why is this important? The reason is, especially when it's highlighted in red, it is giving the reader the impression that that is a highlight. It's a very important goal. It's more important than the rest of the information on the page. When you are applying for a grant as a city, or when your partners are applying for grants, or when a developer is trying to put a project through a PUD process that requires review and not just administrative approval, all three of those purposes rely very heavily on the city plan. Montpelier cannot get a growth center until it conforms with the city plan. Montpelier cannot get a TIF unless the TIF project conforms with the city plan. That sentence really pressures people to prioritize rental housing so that they conform with the city plan. If I were a developer here in Montpelier and I saw that sentence, I would say, uh-oh, I better not have 100% homes. I better not, maybe not even have 50% homes. This unofficial survey, which I hope you will be able to do a more professional job than I was able to do. You okay? Good. All right. Is that it could be as many as 80% of the unanswered needs. I've talked to people recently who've moved out of Montpelier. Thank you. These individual comments, a lot of people have moved out. One moved to Maine because they gave up on Montpelier. So anyways, all I'm saying is, could we please cut that off? And so we don't mislead or go down a path we don't want. Thank you for your time. Yep.
Good. First of all, thank you for validating what I said. When I see red and the rest of it is kind of, I don't know, part black, part gray, and I see blue underlined, the red just is like, whoa, like, you know, alert, alert, alert. And that's why I brought that up. And I brought it up because of I don't believe that most people want to rent. I don't even need a survey to know that, but thank you for doing one. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you very much, Jim. I should say council member,
Jim's fine.
my council member.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you very much, folks.
Next up. Yes, sir.
Hi there, thank you all. I'm going to talk about another number just below the 600. But first of all, hi, my name is Tim Sinnott. I'm a resident of District 1 and the most recent member of the Planning Commission, having joined this past fall. I urge City Council to adopt the new city plan. The plan is a very thorough document that paints an accurate picture of Montpelier's history, present day, and goals for the future. Thinking about our future, the most exciting elements of the plan are the proposals for housing at the Country Club road site and infill throughout the city. I'll add Sabins Pasture to that as well, because that's also exciting to me. The city plan sets a goal of a minimum of 1,500 housing units in the next 20 years. This aspiration is both impressive and necessary and represents a Montpelier city that I want to be a part of. Adopting the new city plan sets us on a path towards achieving our housing needs and ambitions, very simply. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Hello, thank you for allowing folks to speak tonight about this. My name is John Mayfield. I have, and I wrote this down so I don't babble and ramble off into the distance. So I have owned Julio's for the past 20 years, and I've been a District 1 resident of Montpelier for the past 3 years. I believe Montpelier is a really cool town, vibrant, great place to live, and has been overall a great place to do business for a long time. But succeeding in business for the small shops and restaurants in our historic downtown has become more and more difficult. State workers no longer fill our streets for shopping errands or lunch every Monday through Friday. They no longer gather in significant numbers after work, generating an early dinner rush, and I don't believe that they're coming back. Online shopping and increased competition from surrounding towns with large-scale and small-scale shopping and dining operations provide potential customers choices that at times can make Montpelier less attractive. As a result, many downtown businesses are struggling. The city's focus on increasing housing opportunities is critically important, and I support it wholeheartedly. But there has to be additional efforts to put, as the hospitality industry puts it, heads in beds. Here's my honest assessment. Even if Montpelier can increase housing stock by 25% and increase our population by 25% from 8,000 to 10,000, there would still not be enough people on a daily basis to create the critical mass needed to support the numerous small businesses that make Montpelier's downtown the amazing place it is and create stability in the market. There is only one way, from my perspective, to keep Montpelier a successful small business downtown into the future, without a lot of turnover, without businesses going in and out, and without a lot of empty shops. We need increased tourist visits. We're a downtown designed to make travelers ecstatic. 2024 was an amazing year for most businesses in downtown. Example, there was little snow and mild temperatures during the 23-24 winter season, also during the 22-23 season. Unfortunate for the ski towns, but wonderful for Montpelier with winter business up, and I can only speak for myself, but over 20% from previous years in the past, those 2 years, 22-23 and 23-24. As skiers left Stowe and Sugarbush to visit Montpelier. Combined with the effect of the eclipse and the community support from all over New England and Canada after the 2023 floods, Julio's had its very best year ever in 2024. I will tell you that this winter has been the opposite. Cold, dreary, rainy, extended. Vermont. I am here tonight to ask you to revisit the economic development portion of the city plan and make the new hotel objective in the city plan an extremely high priority. If you believe in the small town shopping and dining feel of Montpelier, we need the development of 1 or 2 60 to 80 room hotels in our historic downtown, or walking distance of downtown. The study that was done a number of years ago, I'll throw it. I remember when they had the hotel that everybody was working on and most people were happy about. Going in, it was going to be worth 30,000 meals to downtown. That's a huge number for restaurants in our downtown. If you want to increase city funds for the grand list, as well as some increase in sales tax, meals and rooms, and liquor tax revenues, and allow businesses to afford the increasing property taxes frequently passed on to commercial renters, without a corresponding increase in services, schools, and other areas, we need the development of hotels. According to the National Restaurant Association and the American Hotel and Motel Association, every tourist traveler spends an average of $300 per day in the local community when vacationing. That includes lodging and other things. We almost accomplished this a few years ago before the pandemic. And if the hotel plan had happened, I believe Montpelier City and its businesses would be in a very different economic environment right now. With the federal building and the large parking lot behind it as a development option, it seems a good time to include hotel development as a higher priority goal in the city plan. It's now listed as moderately important. I don't think that's high enough on the scale, at least from my perspective. There is more than one way to put heads in beds when supporting local downtown merchants and increasing local revenues for the city without dramatic increases in needed services, while allowing us to expose folks to America's smallest and most amazing state capital. Please consider making new hotel development a much higher priority item going forward. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I will point out that if the proposed hotel and parking garage had been developed, that new hotel would have been safe from the flood that we were hit with in 2023.
I think it is possible with design. So first of all, people comment, I've heard comments that, well, it's got to fit into downtown. These folks know how to do that. It can fit into downtown and they can be designed in a resilient fashion and can be done in a way that only add to the character of downtown. I'm going to share one brief story if I have a moment, if that's okay. After the 2011 floods, 2 of them, I blew up my back really bad and was 3 months in, and I started to feel better. And I said to my wife, I said, let's go somewhere. And we had a bunch of points with Marriott. And we had looking around and we didn't want to go to a beach town or anything, but we looked at Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And that was about the time that the entire Port Walk development was being done there. And you had a Hilton going in and you had a Marriott residence in and a few other things going in. And we had points, so we went there. And we proceeded to go back 9 times across the next 3 years. Now, Portsmouth does have water. But we've got the shopping, we've got the cute shops, we've got a great place for a romantic weekend, for a family weekend. People, as they get older, don't want to just spend time in a ski lodge. They'll stay in Montpelier and go out. I think that there's great opportunity. And it would be really good for Montpelier, and it's not going to dramatically increase services, required services by the city, and is going to provide funds to fix things. So,
Thanks.
thank you. Any other questions? No?
Anyone have any questions? Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? Mr. Weiss? I've assimilated what you told me and didn't call you doctor.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Thomas Weiss, resident of District 2, and I'll speak to you this evening about the lack of the draft plans. I'm sorry, about the draft plan's lack of information required by statute for a city plan. These omissions are sufficient to return the draft plan to the Planning Commission for revisions. What I did was I compared the statutory requirements for the contents of a city plan against what is actually in the city plan. And these are some of the omissions that I found. The city plan appears to contain no statement of objectives, policies, and programs of the municipality to guide the future growth and development of land, public services, and facilities, and to protect the environment. I do not consider the 3 principles in the landing page to be a statement of objectives, nor did I find any statement of how the scattered mention of existing policies shows how they guide and protect as required by the statute. The land use plan portion fails to set forth the appropriate timing or sequence of land development activities in relation to the provision of necessary community facilities and service. The land use plan portion also fails to provide for the new growth center. The land use plan fails to provide an explanation of how the designation would further the plan's goals and the goals of the goals section of the chapter that covers regional and municipal planning. And it fails to explain how the area meets the requirements for the type of designation to be sought. And the plan also fails to explain why the existing growth center is inadequate, because existing growth centers are designed to handle at least 150% of housing requirements, 100% of commercial and requirements, and growth centers are intended to capture the majority of the new housing and the new commercial. It doesn't require them to capture all of it. So I think the plan needs to provide additional information on that. The land use plan fails to indicate plans for land development in forest blocks and habitat connectors to minimize forest fragmentation and promoting the health, viability, and ecological function of forests. The utility and facility portion of the plan fails to address how the population from the planned 600 new housing units in the next 8 years will affect the utilities and the facilities. That portion of the plan also fails to provide recommendations to meet future needs for community facilities and services with indications of priority of need, costs, and method of financing. There appears to be no statement of policies on the preservation of rare and irreplaceable natural areas, scenic and historic features, and resources. There appears to be no recommended program for the implementation of the objectives of the development plan. The city plan has lots of goals and strategies. It has no clear statement as to what the objectives of the plan are. And each chapter has what is labeled an implementation plan. The playbook, and those pages have no timelines, no indication of order in which actions need to be taken, so I do not consider the implementation plans to meet the statutory requirement. The flood resilience plan fails to identify the locations of the fluvial erosion hazard areas. The draft city plan fails to be built on solid information and projections. The plan does not appear to have been based on inventory studies and analyses of current trends. It does not appear to have discussed the probable social and economic consequences of the proposed plan. The plan does not provide population characteristics and distribution, including income and employment. It does not appear to document existing and projected housing needs by amount, type, and location for all economic groups within the municipality and region. And it does not appear to provide existing and estimated patterns and rates of growth in the various land use classifications and desired patterns and rates of growth in terms of the community's ability to finance and provide public facilities and services. These comments are an overview of the emissions from the draft city plan. I have noted other items within the city plan, too numerous to mention here within my allotted time, and I recommend that you return the draft plan to the Planning Commission for revisions, and thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments. And I do have a response to Jim's comment and Sandy's later follow-up. A couple paragraphs above that 600 units, mostly rental, is a statement, blue paragraph. This city plan values both rental and owner-occupied housing equally. And those two statements are in internal conflict that needs to be resolved, and there are other internal conflicts. I do plan to get more detailed comments on the contents of the plan itself, not just what the plan is omitting, but what is in the plan that I would like to comment on. But of course, I don't have time now since I'm probably 2 minutes over my 5 minutes now.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me continue until I finish.
And if you could get those comments to us in writing, that would be very helpful.
Right.
Thanks. Anybody else in the room? Steve?
Good evening, Steve Whitaker. I'm not as well organized as Anthony Arapino, but I have some notes that will shed some light on this. Part of it is you need to consider the relationship between the City Plan 2025, the White and Burke so-called actionable plan, and the Maple plan. I believe what you're watching unfold, however sausage-like it looks, is attempts to cut corners on the city plan in order to get a growth center application completed by the end of September. I'm confident we're not going to make that goal, and we should just recognize that and take a step back and take a deep breath and go back to work, as others have recommended, on getting a proper city plan done. This city plan draft is a lot of fluff, a lot of aspirations, very little strategy, very little sequencing, very little budgeting, very little accountability. The voters are demanding that we cut taxes and that we cut administrative staff. And to have pinned every task here on individuals, in effect, sets us up for failure, because we don't have contingency plans around how we're going to reallocate the tasks to get the city plan implemented and cut staff when necessary. So there's also the annual strategic plan, which y'all are taking up at other meetings. I'm not going to go, that's a very short term. I suggest you might consider doing an annual revision to maybe a 3-year strategic plan. It's too chaotic to develop a strategic plan from scratch annually, because many things take more than a year to implement. So what I think you're seeing is not a country club road chapter in this draft plan. There's a couple of paragraphs. The most obviously untrue one is the phrase that the city has completed the planning phase with regard to Country Club Road. That is so false, it's just laughable. The city has not completed the planning phase. White and Burke described a phase 2 planning process. Your subcommittee certainly didn't complete the planning. You know, all you did is massage a concept. There's still a planning phase that needs to happen, and it needs to have the public involved. The law requires the public to be involved in a city plan, and this is almost a cynical attempt to get you to adopt the actionable plan after you've substituted a new concept plan and substituted a new set of priorities, eliminating the phase 2, and then incorporate that as if it fills the gap in the city plan for Country Club Road, but yet it lacked the entire public participation of a phase 2 planning process that's required by law. So this is a dysfunction in our planning, and it doesn't attract developers. But as I've stated before, and I think it's most concise to just share it with you. My comments to the Planning Commission at their last meeting. Sorry about that. I'm going to jump to another topic because I can't find that right now. The process, the web-based plan disenfranchises a whole lot of people who are not computer literate. Even a computer literate architect tells you it's like trying to understand the world by following a GPS. It doesn't work. I watched them. I sat through plenty of planning commissions, watched them struggle with it. You know, even to the very last adoption meeting, they couldn't get the plan to behave the way they want it to in a web-based format. And when you print it out, the formatted 11 by 17 sheets are too small to read, as you'll see if you look in the binder. The point size is just ludicrous. So I believe that it was a mistake to go all web before we really got our head around. Maybe after we've really perfected this plan and evolved it to another level and gotten a lot more participation involved. I've been to many of these planning commission meetings and nobody shows up, or 1 or 2 people show up. And then there's the discussion of, well, we've engaged with all the subcommittees. Well, the homelessness task force, not the utilities and facilities, restrooms committee. Terry, did the planning commission meet with the restrooms committee to address that? There's basic needs in town: emergency homeless services, condition of our sidewalks I've mentioned earlier, maintenance. We have these. We spent $250,000 on these wayfinding signs to help tourists. The one right in front of Skinny Pancake, 3 or 4 of the businesses are no longer there. That it points to, the visitor center, there's even a photo of the Susan Calza Gallery. It's not there anymore. And it's featured in our draft plan that isn't even adopted yet. So there's a maintenance problem here, and we keep proposing to build more before we figure out how to maintain what we've got in the way of sidewalks and curbs and storm drains. You know, we're not going to have an unlimited growing budget to keep paying for our expansion with increased taxes, increased water and sewer fees. So we need to restructure our economic calculus and our size of government and our efficiency of government. It shouldn't take multiple meetings or weeks or months to get, the proper date corresponding to the day of the week on an agenda, or the phone-in number for those are just compliance with law. So public participation was next to nil in this process. Peter Kelman, myself, Kim Cheney, former Attorney General, former Chair of the Public Safety Authority, we came in and explained regional dispatch and how that needs to be a part of sharing the costs equitably and quit hanging on to our monopoly service that's unsupervised, unregulated, and unaccountable. And yet Mike Miller served up a softball memo to the police chief, and the police chief comes back and says, we like it the way it is. And Tim Sennett says, we're just going to take the word of our staff. So what's the point of coming in, being expert on a topic and coming in and arguing for why we need to put a discussion of regional dispatch into the plan if that's the way it's going to be crafted? Sorry to expose the sausage, but that's just really what's going on here. This is a failure of a plan. It was written by Mike and it was rubber stamped by a commission that's only half engaged. So,
Steve, if you have also additional comments in writing, or if you find the comments you sent to the planning commission, we'd certainly be happy to take those too.
in the sense of emergency for planning, there's been discussion of enhancing wireless around town. And I would argue, especially with backup power, extended power and fiber connected so that it would stay online during a outage. We had a city hall Wi-Fi, but it was plugged in the basement and it was the first to go. So there's no reason we shouldn't attract tourists by having Wi-Fi all over town, but it needs to be designed to weather a flood and provide a first accessibility to folks during an emergency. The navigation I've suggested prior about as we rebuild sidewalks, we're going to have to rebuild a whole lot of sidewalk with this big dig. A navigation system for sight impaired. We have a town where people are mostly trained to honor the sidewalks. If we put, this could be a destination for tourists who are sight impaired and mobility impaired if we honored the people who already live here who are sight impaired and mobility impaired and made it safe to walk on our sidewalks. Just look at the entrance to City Hall but no, I don't have a prepared speech and I'm not that confident that but a question you have to also answer, are we going to honor prime ag soils? Food resiliency is given tacit token attention in here. Food resiliency, if real disasters happen, is important. We need to think carefully of whether we're going to build around the edges of those clearings at Country Club Road and maintain some of those prime ag soils. We've also got toxicity we haven't addressed in the it's brownfield. There's heavy metals and other chemicals from the golf course. I could be more organized if you schedule. I guess for the next hearing, I'll have some of this boiled down. I printed a lot of it today. So
yeah, we will have at least one additional public hearing. And
in closing, I would second the recommendations that you send this back to the Planning Commission, give up on the Grove Center for this year, and get a real plan done right and probably in a document and address these many errors and omissions that you've heard about tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room who wants to be heard? I'm not seeing anybody who hasn't been heard. I'm not anyone online. I don't want to. Anyone who wants to be heard to. Oh, okay, Peter Kelman.
Peter Kelman, Mountain View Street. I've spent more hours and days that I can count reading various drafts of this plan starting in 2018 when I was on the Housing Task Force. I'll just say very simply, I've written to the Planning Commission detailed comments. I've written to Mike detailed comments. I've copied most of the City Council on many of these, but not all of these. I don't want to go into all the things that are wrong. You've heard a lot of them from a number of people. But I think you have a choice here. if you think that it is realistic and necessary to get a designation and TIF that includes Country Club Road, then I think you should hold your noses and pass this along and cross your fingers and hope that it gets approved. If you don't think that that's a likelihood, then I think you should start the process over. And you should start it over in much the same way as the 2010, which was really done in 2008, I believe, which really engaged the public, which really engaged the committees. I don't care what Mike says about public engagement. The fact that there are so few people here today, except a handful, the fact that there've only been a handful of people who showed up for any of the public engagement sessions that they ran, this has not this has not engaged the public. Now, you can say, as Bill always says whenever I talk about public engagement, well, most people don't care. No, that's not true. But most people don't know how to become engaged. If you want to do this the right way, first of all, actually engage the committees. Actually engage them. Actually have you, city council members, do sessions the way some of you have started to do with your constituents. And get some professional help on how to frame the questions. And the basic question I think that we need to ask, the basic question, not the only question, is what do we want Montpelier to look like 20 years from now or 15 years from now? Do we want to have a population of 16,000? I think Jim asked that question a couple of meetings ago. Well, if so, what would it look like? What would traffic look like? What would schools look like? What would public transportation look like? What would sidewalks look like? And by the way, I don't mean this to be rhetorical. I personally think it would be great to have a town of 16,000, but not a town of 16,000 that it's the town that we look at and see now. It's going to look completely different. Get people to really envision what a town would look like. I thought the comments that John Mayfield made about the hotel were right on. And I think it's actually a tragedy that the idea for a parking garage and a hotel were trammeled. And I think it was because the public wasn't engaged. People didn't know what they were voting for. I mean, my wife and I decided to split. I was for, she was against. Neither of us really understood what was really at stake. We really need to talk about, with a lot of people, what is at stake. I thought that the public engagement process on Country Club Road that was done by White and Burke was excellent. Now, did it draw 8,000 people? No, but it drew hundreds of people. That's more than this whole process has done. So you guys need to decide. You can be cynical. No, sorry. You guys need to decide. Do you think there's a prayer of getting approval for this process, for this plan? And if so, just send it on. Don't spend a whole lot more time on it. There's too many things wrong with it. Or should you start over? If we start over, it's got to be done in a completely different way. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Are there any other comments from the public? Peter, yours is the only hand I'm seeing. You've lowered it. I'll remind all the members of the public that there will be at least one more opportunity to be heard next week if you have some thoughts about this. But seeing no other.
Can I take one minute?
Yes, you can take another minute.
Then I found what I was shuffling for. And again, the context here is that the country club chapter is missing and it's trying to be, hoodwinked in later as the actionable plan with substitutions. And that is left out of the entire public process that is already deficient. I think it's errors and omissions on behalf of the planning commission, but specifically Country Club Road. Now we've got a draft delivered to the council that says the planning process is complete. And we should skip phase 2 and adopt the actionable plan. So what's left to adopt in the Whitenburg plan, if you ignore the advice to do phase 2 iterative process of planning, and we're throwing out their concept and substituting in another, it's absurd to be recommending adoption of that because it's no longer Whitenburg's plan that we paid for. You're and I think it's deceptive. I've done a deep analysis of what it's going to take to get a growth center application approved, and we are nowhere close, especially with the capital budget and capital program. Those are tasks of the planning commission, and we have never had a 5-year capital program, which includes every sidewalk, road, water, sewer, pipe, priced out, estimated, prioritized, identified sources of funds for each of those things, including civic bus shelters, et cetera. Every bit of that has to be in a 5-year capital plan to qualify for a growth center. And we've never had that. And we've got the unique circumstances. This is Country Club Road adjacent, abutting, because when Sabins was added to the growth center, it was through the old rules, which have since been revoked. They realized that we didn't have the proper paperwork or application to get Sabins in. And the application to put a piece of Sabins in only wanted the southwest corner. And it said, at all costs, protect the upper highlands. Now we're ignoring all that. We're saying the whole thing's in, it had to be in, the whole parcel had to be in to get the TIF. But now we're saying we're going to build a road in from through the highlands, the protected view up in order to get to Country Club Road. I don't think that's going to fly with the capital, the state board. And frankly, I've also said this, the combination of needs, we've got homeless shelter, we've got flood resiliency, we've got Turtle Island, we've got Frisbee golf, we've got pickleball, we've got the rec department, we've got potentially workforce training for the unhoused, if they were allowed to camp up there, because it's no longer a sensitive area. We've got a lot of things that need to be, you can't rely on RFPs for for-profit developers to put that kind of master plan together. To balance those things, what sense of privacy is anyone who buys a lot or buys a tiny home up there going to have if the whole thing is this ambiguous rec area? Somebody told me that they want a place to walk their dog off leash. That's okay, but Hubbard Park doesn't work. The rules, but my point is that without a master plan, we're not going to achieve something that's good for all of Montpelier. We're going to probably provide an ungated community for very rich people, but our needs right now are agriculture, the tree farm for the Parks Department, a place for the homeless to live dignified and have hygiene, right? This idea, the homeless chapter in this plan is a joke because it says, oh, we're going to just rely on the partners and pretend they're doing it, even though 2/3 of the people don't fit into the Good Sam rubric, and we're just going to complain about them on our streets, right? So the city has to own this issue, and instead we tend to tear down every shelter, Girton shelter, bus shelter, take out the concrete benches, and interestingly leave the council out of all those decisions so there's no political repercussions. All those things happen without the council ever weighing in and saying, no, we should leave, although with the exception of Girton. Y'all decided to take Girton Park away. But my point is, without a master plan, I'm going to oppose the growth center and the TIF district, and I believe I'll prevail because a master plan is the only way that we're going to get what's good for all of Montpelier instead of a few. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in the room or online who would like to be heard? Pause for a moment. All right, at this point, we will close the public hearing. Do council members want to talk about this at all now, or would you like to wait till next time? Jim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the tables that I'm sitting at here. And I'm the only one that went through the 2010. It was like day and night from what this is. I mean, we held a thing at National Life that was packed in their cafe. Packed. We had to have a number of people with boards taking the comments. They were flying like, we were almost like, oh my God, they're just going to take 3 years to go through all these comments. But my point was, it was so night and day. It just seemed like it was well set up. It was heavily attended. And it just was so different than this. And I know none of you went through that, but I did.
I did.
Okay, but you weren't on the board then.
True.
I was on the council then, and I went through also the one in 2005 that kind of reminded me of this. And that's why we did the one after that, because nobody was happy with 2005. And everybody was happy. 2010 was like the template that how things should be done, in my opinion. And this wasn't it. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else?
I heard Adrian say before, I've got a ton of questions. And to be honest, I would like to hear some questions. Do you have time to reflect for the next week? I just think if people have like pressing questions, I mean, I will just say, like, I really appreciate all the comments that came tonight. I was particularly struck with the economic development component around the hotel. Like, I just think, for those of us that have gone, we don't need to even go to the meetings to know this, like that the businesses are struggling, right? And that a hotel is just really important in our downtown. And so anyway, that's just like a minor thing, but I have to say it was really compelling to me. I would love to hear from other people, thoughts on the plan, just to so we can all kind of start to reflect on it over the coming week.
Adrian, the floor is yours. Yes.
Sure. Okay, so I guess, let me just have a whole bunch of questions.
Hold on a minute. Let me pause for a moment. We generally take a break at 8:30. Maybe we should do that now and come back at 8:30. All right, we are back. Thank you. And we're just 1 minute over our 10-minute break. So excellent. So before we broke, we turned the floor over to Adrian for a list of questions. And if you also have them in writing, that would be perfect. But
Make them up.
all right.
I'm sure you cannot read my handwriting, so I will write them up. And so I'll start off with, this is like a ton of work. So thank you, planning department and the planning commission and everyone who has taken the time to provide input and review and edit. And I know there's some folks in our community that have spent years reviewing and editing and their time because they, one, they like doing it, and two, this is really important. I feel like this is a very important process for our community. It's an important document for our community. And so I want to make sure that we get this right. And, I have very high level comments today, nothing line by line, but just as a structure. This is what I do for a living. I build strategic plans, not for cities, but for organizations. And one of my goals when I work with organizations is to not have them on the shelf, right? That is like the ultimate gold star, is to build a plan and not have it sit on a shelf. And so that is what I hope we can get to, and that this is a manageable plan. This is something that is actionable. and that we can measure, right? So how, like what Palin asked earlier, how do we know we're being successful? How do we know when we fail? Which is also a very important part of planning, because we're not going to accomplish everything 100% in this plan. So I think my first question is, it's really the web-based structure, and it really concerns me in terms of like updating the website, updating the maps. And like, do the maps have to be included in the city plan? Because it's ArcGIS, like, I feel like that can be a total separate, like, part of our website that's not even included on the city plan, because just updating that, like having the data connected to it, just seems really complicated. Like my overall goal for the city plan is to make this easy. And right now, like, this is so complicated, my head wants to explode a little bit in terms of like tracking the aspirations, the goals, the strategies, everything that's online. Like I can't understand it. And I'm a highly educated master's degree, person that does this for a living. So that's a huge concern for me, is the structure of this plan, how it is online, how we have all these maps and ArcGIS, how we're going to keep it updated, who's going to update it, do we have the capacity to update it, like huge concerns in terms of like making these updates on a website and having this, I don't even know, like I think I don't have the whole plan printed out here. I think it was like 200 pages on 11 by 17. Like how are we going to maintain this plan? Like, it's a huge concern for me. And I think it's overwhelming. And when I referenced, we don't want this plan to sit on the shelf, I feel like that's what's going to happen, even though that's not what we want to happen, because it's just a bear. It's too big. And so that's a concern. And I don't know if you want to answer the question about who is going to maintain this website. I see it's created for the city of Montpelier by SE Group, but it's built by ArcGIS Hub. So what does that mean? Like, who are these people, and are they going to update it, or is the city staff going to update it?
So I can start with that question. That is, the program it is built in is the Esri ArcGIS story map. So that is the program that this is built in. And it is a standard, company standard GIS, Geographic Information Systems. Everybody uses this. And the reason we selected this as the product is because the city already owns it. All of our utilities, all of our roads, all of that infrastructure is all mapped out in GIS in these data layers. And so unlike other platforms that we could have chosen, with the technology and the way it shifts and changes over time, you could pick a company that could be gone in 3 years. Esri ArcGIS is not going anywhere. They are the standard of this niche. Regarding who would update it, there are a lot of people, including Nick in my office. He's got a degree in GIS. Zach Blodgett also does a lot of this, and basically a lot of the engineers in the engineering department also do it. But the plan itself can only be updated by city council. So this isn't something that's going to have an annual or something. I mean, you can update it as annually if you want, but we don't have to keep going back every couple of weeks and months and maintain the city plan. It is going to be a static document until the next time that you change it. I think at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, it was late. I'm sure everyone was tired. But one of the points of kind of using this software is that I think it's got a lot more power, and we could set things up to have dashboards and have ways of tracking it. We took the most legally conservative approach for this first adoption. That said, we're the first people in the state to do this. It's been done around the country. but we're the first in Vermont to kind of go out and have a city plan that's uses a web-based format for the product. And we had it reviewed by our attorneys. Everybody is fine with using the Esri product. But where we had questions was, all right, what if we had certain dynamic aspects? Could we make the plan in such a way that it's static on top? So you've got a single page that's static, there's a line, and then you could have a dashboard. You know, what could we do that could still meet state law, but give us the ability to start tracking? Let's have a section underneath. So the city plan goes down 7/8 of the page, and the last 1/8 is benchmarks and performance standards over time. And that can change. We have opportunities. What I'm trying to say is we've got opportunities to use this product and do things differently going forward. But for this first plan, it was just the basic nuts and bolts of it's got to be static. It's got to be here. We have the ability to fix things and make things. Nick is really good. Tim, the gentleman that was here giving input, he's also a GIS person. He's on the planning commission. I mean, there are people in the community who know how to do this. It's not a huge expense. SE Group was a group that helped us build this. So that's who SE Group is. They helped us build the product. They were the consultant that we spent money on.
Thanks, Mike. And I'll just tell people, yeah, I asked Mike to be, there are some questions that are really like thought questions, other questions that if Mike has the information that he can give us right now, we should have him do that. So.
Mike, could you just briefly tell us what the legal requirement is that you're talking about for the static version versus the dynamic stuff? I mean, is it possible to do it in 25 words or less? I mean,
there's not a specific phrase or piece in statute that says that. It's just the city plan gets proposed and adopted. And so there's a certain expectation that is, you know, but I could bring in a couple of attorneys that might disagree and say, oh, no, you can still have it be dynamic. But we were trying to be as conservative as possible. And that's what our attorneys recommended was don't have dynamic elements built into your city plan. Stick with the as static a plan as you can. The maps are static and don't change.
All the goals are they are going to be the way they are and not changeable until the council changes it. Right?
But the story map allows for dynamic elements.
What we've called it is it's interactive at this point, but it's not dynamic.
But does the software currently allow for that to happen?
Oh, we could absolutely. That software, you could look at other places that would, as new information came out, it would automatically update to the next. You know.
Okay, keep going.
The other piece of this is, for, a city plan, and I reviewed a couple, I went through that, I can't remember the website, but I looked at all the other city plans and, a lot of them had, measurable goals. And we talked about adding benchmarks at some point. But even like looking through here, like the goals, I think, I'm not looking at this for content per se yet. I'm just looking at this as a structure. But like the strategies, we have a lot of strategies and when I read through here, it looks like the work that we're already doing. And you said that earlier, it's like one of the strategies for building this new city plan is to capture what we're doing. But is that the right strategy? Like, I don't know if you all debated that, but when I think of a city plan and I looked at other city plans, it's more like the vision, like where do we want to go? Like, what do we want to be in 15 years? Not like, what are we currently doing? It's a different way of thinking about it. And you said earlier, you all, had these conversations, but I'm concerned that we're not being as aspirational or as visionary as we should be when we're really looking at like all these strategies are continue, amend, update. You're using these verbs of what we're already doing rather than really taking the time, kind of what Jim was saying back in 2010, like having those storyboards, having the community participation. Like I would love for that to happen and take the time to, set a goal of, do we want 30% of Montpelier residents age 5 to 100 plus participate in this plan? Because we need to get our youth involved, right? The youth is our future. And how do we get them involved? How do we bring this to the schools? How do we bring this to the churches? How do we do a road tour of Montpelier with the city plan? I just don't think we've done that. And I don't think we've captured any aspirational visionary goals. What we're doing is capturing the strategies of what we're currently doing and potentially benchmarking that, which we should do anyway. But is this the right place in a city plan to have these activities? I would say no, but I think that's up for debate and argument on how others think about this. So I think like fundamentally, I'm not super psyched about this.
Okay,
I think I'm gonna stop there.
okay. Anybody else?
No, not exactly. I mean, I am plowing through it. I mean, it's a massive document, quite a piece of work. I'm not surprised you've been working on it for 7 years. I mean, it reminds me of, a giant thesis, or a very complicated Journal of Light Construction article, how to. And I have some comments, but I haven't organized them really in preparation for this meeting. And my plan was to kind of write them up and send them out to people and to you. You're well acquainted with my emails. And then hopefully we could then discuss them, at the next meeting. But I did find it tricky to deal with the format. This is an odd way to. It was just a little bit tricky. I started labeling things like with letters because I wanted to refer to a particular strategy, and there was no way there was nothing to say that's the one I want without reading the caption. So some simple things like that might make it easier to use. I also understand the tension between a web-based version and a static version. I mean, the archive is a couple of hundred pages. You either have to bind that. I mean, who's going to print that out? That's half a ream of paper. So access is difficult, and I'm not surprised that more people would access it online. I think we do have to try and figure out how people who can't or won't access it online, can get access to it. I'm not sure what the solution is there, but it's a first attempt at it, and I think it's probably on the right track. We just have to work at it, make sure we monitor and see what we can improve and get some feedback from the public once it's been out there. But I'll prepare something.
Thanks. Thinking about what you were saying, Adrian, I think that what we see here are some of both things. For instance, we have create a river's edge master plan. That is like a vision of something we could be doing, conduct a survey of existing dams. That's something we could and should be doing. But on the other hand, under resilience, we have continue to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Obviously, we need to do that, right? The fact that it's the fact that we're doing it already doesn't mean that it's not something that we should have in our plan. And so I think that there's a mix of different things. There's something about continue to enforce the housing code. Obviously, we need to continue doing that. Ben.
I'm sorry, Jay, I didn't
No,
but I had thoughts along the similar lines of I mean, this is maybe very simplistic, but like just thinking about, well, first of all, I just want to say in general, I also want to just thank all the people that put all the time into this plan. It is an incredible undertaking. It's, not perfect, nothing is. I will say that in a previous time in my life, part of my job was reading like comprehensive economic development strategy documents. And in a lot of ways, this is actually like much better than many of them I read, including like the one from the state. So whatever, there's the things, but I really appreciate the work that went into it. I understand the concerns about access. I think those are things that maybe we could try and find ways to mitigate that. I also think, I'm thinking about, Adrian, when you're talking about like, we got to get kids involved. Like my son is not picking up a 400-page document, right? He might look at something like this on a phone, but anyway, more substantively, just in terms of the formatting, there is a lot of the continue stuff. And, but as Jack, as you're saying, anything that's new won't make sense without it being in the context of what we're already doing, right? Like the stuff that is new is informed by what we do now. And so I think actually having them together is important. I do think though, I wonder, Mike, I don't know if this is too complicated or too hard, but it's like the continues are scattered all over the place, right? It's like we'll do this, continue, we'll do this, we'll continue. What if we just like had different color hatching on this document that like, here's all the, 60% of these are things that we're already doing right now and are all grouped together, followed by the 40% of things that are new. And what you're talking about, Sal, like the logical order in which the strategies are listed, to me, that makes more sense. If I get an overview of this is what we're doing right now for strategies in the area of land use, here's 4 new strategies that we're putting in place, and I can tell that they're different, they're grouped differently. It makes it, I think, a little bit more intelligible.
Mike, one of the questions that I think about as we're talking about this plan, and it's come up a couple of times, which is people talking about how hard or easy it is to use this plan. And aside from us as policy makers using the plan as a way to figure out where our zoning bylaw should go and other city decisions should go, how else do people use something like a city plan?
I mean, it's certainly going to be used in the permit process if it gets into Act 250 and those types of regulatory systems. So that certainly comes into play. City plans can be used, as minimalistic as we're just doing it. So we've got enough to check all the boxes so we can qualify to be able to do something else. We don't really plan to use it. It's just, all the way out to something that's really meant to be a communication tool. And the way we envisioned the story maps and the storyboards was that was intended to be the communication tool to the public, the more interactive communication. If the public is interested in knowing something and maybe getting a little bit, this goes less to the development of the plan, which I know some of you are talking about, maybe we needed a different process for the development of the plan. But once the plan's in place, the other thing I had mentioned late at night was that one of the biggest opportunities this format provides is the ability to add videos. And that is what has made a difference in a number of plans around the country that have been award-winning plans around the country, is that you have this, and at the top, you've got a video. You get it professionally produced. You don't have me doing it. You've got the professional produced video that will go through and explain to you in 5 minutes, what is our housing plan? What are the issues? What's the plan? It's graphic. And, you can go to different communities around the country that have done these. And when they look at it, 80 to 85% of the traffic are just people watching the videos. And so if you want to connect with people and you want this to be a communication tool, and we didn't really have the time or the budget, but we also need to have a point where we say, let's have the plan and have, look at the aspirations that are written. Because remember, the strategies aren't your aspirations. There is an aspiration here And we've got to go through and read it and say, you know, is that our aspiration? Is that our future that we're hoping for? If that's our goal, then the next thing is, okay, we're going to break into a couple bite-sized pieces. And are these strategies going to get to those bite-sized pieces and get that done? Or are we missing pieces? Or are we wasting time on something that goes through and says, you know, we're continuing to do this. It's not working. Maybe we need to abandon that for a different idea. But I think, so I think a roundabout way is, I think the one way of using this as a better communication tool is that as we move forward the next year, 2 years, we say, we want this to be a better communication tool. We've agreed this is what our strategy is going forward for the next 8 to 10 years. Let's do some videos. Let's find out how much it would cost. Let's put the resources in. Let's do these videos. Let's do them right. And then we can track that online. You can track the number of hits, and we can go through and say, how is that working? These are a little more complicated, as you pointed out, but these are actually designed for you and for the committees and for the staff. These are less for the public. These are for the wonks who really want to get into what exactly are we going to do for housing? Very specifically, we've got, you know, an encampment policy, or we've got zoning, but we need to make an amendment to that. And here are the things we should amend to make this better for X.
And similarly, at the beginning, I said that what I think is most useful for people is to talk about the top level concepts, the aspirations and the goals. So just since it's at the top of the page, or the top of my stack, land use is the first page. There are 2 aspirations. Montpelier will have a resilient historic urban center with complementary mixed uses, commercial and industrial areas surrounded by residential neighborhoods to grow the community region. And the next one about protected and conserved areas. And so the question is, do we think those are what we should be shooting for? Should we amend those because we're on the wrong track with some of it, or we're missing something? And I'm interested in hearing, especially as we go forward, what people think about that. Adrian. Okay, Pam.
Yeah, for having more feedback and create more inclusion, is it possible, starting from tomorrow until the next public hearing, if we can create QR codes and just like put maybe in front of the each store or something, I don't know, then people can just like go and check this and give more feedback. And because Mike, you said we can see the how many people click, right? Then we can just like kind of measure if anyone is really interested in seeing this, or they are just kind of leaving the decision to the city council, right? Can we do this, or it will be too much? Just like a.
I wouldn't be able to. I'm actually going to finally get 2 days off. So I'm taking Thursday and Friday off, so I'll be back Tuesday.
Okay, so your answer is no. I did not.
I wouldn't be able to, and Evelyn's not here, and she would probably be the primary person I would have leaned on to help to be able to put a communication program together.
So between May 21st and May 28th, there just aren't the days to do that.
Yeah, there just aren't the days or the staff.
However, we may not, May 28th also may not be the end of this process. We certainly have more public hearings or more.
And sorry, but I don't want to interrupt. And sometimes like in the restaurants, they put things right on their table. We can ask them just to trying to reach out more people. That's all. So yeah, you are right, Jack. It doesn't have to be maybe this one, but I think it will be good if people see it, and maybe we can put like, oh, this is the QR code for the digital. If you want to see the print version, please visit City Hall or something. I don't know. Then we can collect more feedback. And then when we talk about, public involvement and engagement, then we can have something like we've tried. And this is the number of the engagement or something. Thanks.
Okay, now Adrian.
Right, so I have a couple things. So while I was responding to Palin, so I think what you're getting at is I think proposing like an overall strategy for additional, additional public engagement into the city plan. So I think that's like one idea, but I think there needs to be like a strategy,
Yeah.
right? So like a QR code could be one of many strategies that we think about, but I think we're missing the strategy for public input. So I think we need to talk about that and what that might look like. The other thing is, and maybe Mike, if you have any data on this, but when I am not an expert on all 12 chapters, and nor do I ever want to be. And so when I look at, the goals and aspirations, how do I know they're right? And more importantly, how do I know what's missing, right? So when I'm thinking of those terms of looking at this, my mind works in gaps. So what's missing? What do we not know that's not on here? And I would love to understand from you, like, and we did talk about this a little bit today, but really the process of like land use, what experts in land use develop this? What experts in housing develop this? And then what was the feedback loop to ensure that we have everything in here that we want from the experts? And that, because I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know what might be missing. So I don't know if I can make like a really strong educated decision on, are these the right goals? Because I'm just not sure.
I mean, Mike, do you mind if I start for a second?
I'm not.
I would just say well, first, actually, I do have a question that I'll get to, but like on the aspirations to land use, for example, actually, I do think that that's spot on. I mean, to me, this is like actually the fundamental land use policy of the state of Vermont, like a dense center surrounded by conserved land or working landscape, right? Like that is, I think, the fundamental tenet of Vermont land use. And I think that that's reflected in what does that look like in Montpelier? And I think it's an aspirational statement. And this is kind of my question, maybe, the way I'm trying to like think about how is this all scaffolded?
If you're getting past your answer to Adrian and moving into your own question.
Yeah.
I want to call on Carrie first because she's
Yes.
had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Thank you. So I want to echo everybody's appreciation of all the work that has gone into this from the planning department and the planning commission. It's huge and it's a lot. So thank you. And I want to kind of back up to a little bit of a logistical structural question about how the plan is actually arranged. So someone was kind enough to print out these gigantic pieces of paper that I see some other council members have. That is the implementation plan for each of the chapters. And that's where we see aspirations, goals, and strategies. But then when you go to the online version and you look at the storyboard, is that what it's called? And you get a whole lot of other information that I don't really understand how it all works together. So for instance, when earlier in this meeting, we had members of the public talking about how the city plan says that we have a goal of this many units and mostly rental. And I'm looking through my implementation plan and it's not in here. And I realized, oh, it's in the other part that's sort of descriptive and and it uses the word goal. But then when you read the goals, it is not there. And then also in the housing section in the story map, it talks about a housing for all approach, but I don't see anything mentioned. I don't see that phrase anywhere in the strategies. So what is the relationship here? And what's the plan that we're going to work off of? And how will the public understand what it is that we're actually going to do with this?
All right, so I will, yes, I will try to get at all of that. So if you were to look at what's in statute as requirements, there are 12 required statutes, and you have to have a plan that talks about energy, and a plan that talks about housing, and a plan that talks about transportation, a plan that talks about land use. So you have requirements for all of those pieces to be in there. And as a part of those requirements, it talks about needing to have certain conversations or certain discussions. And there are requirements that you have to have maps. In certain cases, transportation must have a plan and map for these topics. And so you have to talk about certain things. You can certainly talk about more, but you have to address certain things. And the plans are really kind of broken into, there is a requirement for having an implementation plan and having implementation plans for each chapter. We have developed what I would say is much more robust implementation plans than you would find in most other city plans. So there's been a lot more emphasis put on that because of the hope that we would be building this towards providing input and making it a usable document. If it doesn't have this level of detail and thought that goes into it, then it becomes a little less useful for accomplishing the goals. It's more a visionary document, but without the action steps. This is trying to kind of balance that and have the information, and then also having a detailed strategy of how we're going to accomplish it. And does that kind of answer the question, Carrie, for you?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, because it seems like there's two different parts to this. There's the implementation plan, which is very easy for me to understand. It's got aspirations, and then that goes down to goals, and then that goes down to strategies. And it's really clear and easy to get my head around. But then it's got these other parts that are online that use language that is similar, like goals and stuff. And I don't know how those two connect. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's called, a story map?
Story map or storyboard, yes.
Okay,
Story
so
map, yeah.
and you said that that's what's intended to be the part that the public sees. So is it that the language in there is just sort of descriptive and not really official? Or, and the implementation plan is kind of the actual official plan? I don't understand what the part on the story map is. If we're going to have things like that, we're going to describe goals, but then they're not actually showing up in the implementation plan. What does that mean?
Yeah. So I guess I would answer that by saying the hope is, the expectation is that we are very consistent, and but there are certain things we could not put in the implementation plan. Like there's a requirement that you have to show forest blocks, and you have to show wildlife connections. You have to have these certain maps. You have to have these plans talked about. So you can't just have the implementation plan. And I'm glad you find the implementation plans. If you're understanding one side or the other, that's helpful. How they connect is it's a little bit of a challenge, because the one piece is it could be just a lot more typical of a plan. Take any housing plan from the state, and it's just 85 pages of words, pictures, and graphs. We certainly could go through and have a whole bunch of words, pictures, and graphs that go into the plan side, and then still have this implementation plan. We chose to go more graphically and use the maps, and to take that approach and to try to summarize things, try to give the background. Now, if we didn't in certain plans, so the plan context is really trying to give the background and explanation for why we end up with that aspiration and goals. But if we failed to make that clear, then that's something that we would want to work on making clear either now or in the future.
Are you happy with that answer, Carrie? Yeah. Or that's the answer for the present.
Yeah, I'm set. Thank you very much, Mike.
Adrian, yeah.
my question wasn't answered, so I'll ask it a different
Yeah,
way.
no, I still had it written down. So if you want me to answer it, I can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wanna look at land use, because it sounds like, I'm like, that's fine, but like, who created the economic development chapter? Like, who created these, like, arts and culture, like, some examples of maybe ones that, I don't know, maybe this, yeah. Like, who
Yeah,
did that?
so the reason this took a long time is that the intent for how we were going to develop this plan was to use our local experts who are on the various committees. So the housing committee to do the housing plan. And so we met with them a long time ago, and it was the housing task force. And, you know, that's some of the comments you've heard is that, you know, some of those had gotten dated because we would do housing in 2018 and, you know, here we are already in 2023 and some of that has gotten a little stale. So we had to go back and make some changes. So the various committees for the implementation plans, we had a format that the planning commission agreed to. This is what we want to try to do, which is why everything follows a consistent format. Those, you know, strategies, are we continuing? Are we doing something new? The goals, are we improving things? Are we maintaining things? So we had very tight rules as to what we were going to try to do. And then we went to each of the committees to go through in sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings to go through, here's a draft based on the old plan, based on some new information of goals, aspirations, and what do you think are the strategies? And don't worry about, I mean, just pile them in. And what we did after that, after we had something of input from the committee, was we started to combine them. Otherwise, we ended up with like 70 because, oh, we should have a program for, I don't know, I think historic resources. We should have walking tours. And somebody else is like, we should have new signs that go up and we should have these. And at a certain point, we're like, these are all really talking about public outreach. We'll bundle all these up into a program that says we really need to have a public outreach program that does these 8 things. And so we would go through and kind of bundle them up. And then the planning commission would review the aspirations and the goals and make decisions as to whether or not, you know, this is what the Historic Preservation Commission said. Do we agree with it? Do we not agree with it? Sometimes they'll make some tweaks and we adjust it and then we move on and we do arts and culture was mostly based on the public arts master plan. Kirby Keaton actually, as the planning commission chair, took it under, you know, his own thing. He's like, I think we need to have that. We've got the plan. We'll put it together. And I think he worked with one of the folks from the Arts Commission to kind of basically codify that plan into the arts and culture. In the public input, when we got to that step, there were people that made recommended changes that we made some changes to. But the initial bulk of who developed land use, the answer is the planning commission in that case. But housing was the housing committee, transportation committee, energy committee, and so on.
So what is missing? So I know the housing committee, we got those emails and I know that there were recommendations that weren't all included in this version. But are there other chapters in this plan that I feel like, are we missing stuff? Like, how do we know what we're missing? Like, I don't know, but I feel like it's really concerning to me because I know that the housing chapter, I went to the planning committee or the public hearing for housing. There were so many comments. I read through your matrix. Thank you for doing that. It was actually very helpful to see Mike put together a matrix of comments received, recommendations from the staff, and then what was completed. There's, I mean, I don't know, tons of, I don't know how many pages it is front and back, but I didn't go through and check like what the comments were and what was updated. But I'm only looking at the paper version. And so, but this isn't going to be the approved plan, the paper version, the one online is going to be the approved plan. So I feel like I'm just concerned that I'm missing comments, I'm missing important suggestions that are relevant, that could have an impact on the future of a lot of these projects. So how do I know what's missing?
Do you have an answer to that? or-
I mean, I'm not sure 100% about understanding what's missing. I mean, we have to meet the certain requirements and I think in some cases, some of this is, not unlike when we do big changes to the zoning. At a certain point, you think you've got everything covered and you just start rolling with it. And if you realize something has been overlooked or omitted or that's just bad policy, then you go back and fix it. And but I think some of this is the framework and making sure certain topics are addressed. Like I said, state law requires certain topics. I've been doing this a while. There are certain topics that I know just make sense as a professional planner that we need to make sure we're addressing and talking about things.
Jim.
I'd like to address something that we haven't talked about. And it's basically like, how do we get people involved? Well, let's take a look at what we're getting them involved with. A boring subject for most people. Lots of pages of stuff. Most people, unless you're like us in government doing stuff like this, the average person finds this boring. So how do we make it an engaging community thing? You sell it as this is the topic, but we're going to have a community gathering with food. Food always draws people. You make it like you're going to have a period where you meet neighbors or other community members, and then we go into what do we want our city to look like down the road so that you have a subject that it's all brought into to help you get public input. But you're not going to get a lot of public input by just saying, come to a city plan, because most people, young people, they're going to find this boring. I mean, I find it kind of boring and I sit here. So how can we make it a little more fun? And that's what we did in 2010. It was in the National Life cafeteria. There was a social time, there was some food, and it put people in a good mood. And then they're like, okay, here's what we're really here for. Let's talk about what would you like to see in the city? What do you want the future? And that's when all the boards were thrown up, and that's where you're going to get what's missing. Because you're going to hear things from people that nobody thought of. Of course, the hard part is separating the fantasy from the reality, but still you're going to draw some gems out of it. But I don't see us drawing people by just saying, hey, we need help on the city plan, come and do it. It's boring for most people to do. So how do we make it fun? Well, you draw them in and then you say, okay, this is the real thing of the meeting. And that's, I think, how it was done. And it was just this huge crowd. People came in, they socialized, they got some food, and then, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun. And they started throwing ideas at the wall. And I'm just throwing that out because we're not gonna get a lot of people except what I call the usual suspects any other way. So we don't get any new ideas and we don't find out what we're missing. Because some people will supply what we're missing because everybody has their own view. I mean, yeah, that takes some organization, but that's how, in my opinion, I wasn't around for the start of this, but if somebody would have said, well, how are we going to do the public part? I would have said, we got to make it like it's a party and get the people to come out and then tell them what it's about. But, that's just me. So how do we make it not boring? Anything simple.
Council members, anything else? And Peter, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I'd like to answer some of the questions. Carrie, very good spotting the inconsistencies in the language between the playbook, sorry, what is it called? Anyway, there's inconsistencies all over the place. And the reason is there hasn't been a professional copy editor on this project. So my first recommendation is get a copy editor. That's what copy editors do. They get rid of inconsistencies. Even the video has all kinds of inconsistencies. It says up here, it's the planning, and Mike says plan. Somebody, a professional copy editor, will catch those inconsistencies, and that I think will answer your questions. Number two, the question of separating the complete this, the difference between what we're already doing and what's new. I think Ben had a really good idea about, just put all the things that we're already doing in one place. I actually looked at the resiliency chapter, and 90% of what was there was things that was continue. It's not a small amount. So take a look at that, because it definitely makes it more boring to see all the continues and then look around. What's new here? Okay, third thing. Mike said, oh, well, I'm going to be away. Evelyn isn't around or whatever. Staff capacity. I think Adrian hit the nail on the head. An online version, like our city website, which is a 1990s product, is going to require more staff capacity than we have. Mike used a tremendous amount of time of Evelyn's. Evelyn is a communication director. You guys sort of started to eliminate some of the positions to support this kind of thing. I don't care what Mike says, supporting this site is going to require capacity that the city does not really have. And then finally, proofreading, committees. The first group to go back to with this plan and say what's missing are the committees. And I don't just mean the housing committee, which already expressed their displeasure with the fact that they didn't feel that they were heard. But how about the Social and Economic Justice Committee? How about the ADA Committee? How about the Homelessness Committee? How about the Complete Streets Committee? How about the committees that cut across these areas? Ask them what's missing, and you're going to hear what's missing. You're going to hear them raise questions about, did you forget about not everybody is able-bodied? And then just the second to last thing, I think Jim hit the nail right on the head. Not only was the way they did it in the 2010 plan really have an engagement process, but when that plan was done, I disagree with Mike completely that that thing sat on the shelf. How does he know? It was printed. I've read that thing. I've talked to other people about it. It didn't just sit on the shelf. And I'll tell you where it got used a lot, unfortunately, which was at public hearings. People like Tom Weiss would say, it says right here in the master plan, XYZ, and this is contradicting it. A lot of people use that plan. Maybe not in the way that I would have liked them to use a plan, but it was used. And you can't say, oh, well, the idea that it wasn't used online, well, because nobody could find it online because our website's a mess. So I think Jim's idea of a great process, something like what Burke and White and Burke did for Country Club Road. And then finally, what's missing from this plan? Vision. That's what's missing from this plan, vision. Now, I sent an email out to you guys, or to some of you, in which I just quickly brainstormed some questions that I would have asked if I were if I'd been the planning director. I would have asked,
Peter, I don't
Okay.
want you to take,
I'll send it.
you
I'll
send it, yeah, thank you. All right, those are some thoughts for,
Jack, can I make a 10-second comment?
yes,
Question?
is it gonna be 10 seconds?
What role, if any, did the winning concept plan from the Montpelier 2050, 2030 net zero competition, which was won by the Team Bridges, what role did that play in crafting this plan? You know, was Team Bridges invited or considered for a contract in crafting a plan to implement that fully engaged, award-winning competition product?
Okay, fair enough. That's part of the process. It was not an official city activity, but fair enough. All right, folks. There's a lot to take up. My prediction right now is that we're not going to be finished with this on May 28th. But we shall see. But I think that's where we need to be for this part of this conversation, and so we can move to city council reports, starting down at your end this time, Taylor.
No report. Thank you.
Ben.
Just a couple of quick things. The subcommittee in searching for a search firm met today. We received 14 proposals, narrowed it down to 4 finalists, have interviewed those finalists, and are prepared to make a recommendation at our next meeting. So we're real excited about that and look forward to hearing your thoughts on the proposal. The other thing I would say is just an update from the Montpelier Commission on Recovery and Resilience. Secretary Curley did submit a letter of interest in the federal building to GSA, was received, as did Bill wrote a letter of support for that. And I think the next step, my understanding, would be a meeting with GSA, ACCD, presumably the commission, and I would assume the city, if there was interest. And then just one thing the other thing I just want to say, I'm really sorry to have missed the last meeting and just really appreciated people's words about Nathan Suter. Visiting hours for Nathan's family was last night. I've never seen anything like it. I couldn't even put a number on it, but for a solid 3 hours, there was a line down St. Paul Street that I couldn't see the end of. And I think that's just a testament to the kind of person and leader that he was. One of the things I've been reflecting on in the search committee was a question that we asked of one of the consultants, actually all of the consultants, we asked them all the same question, but one answer that really stuck with me was, the question was, what can we do as a community to ensure a successful search for our next city manager? And what I heard someone say is to always remember that it is a two-way interview, that we're interviewing them to find the qualities that we want, and they're interviewing us for the qualities that they want, and to determine what kind of community they want to be a part of for the future. And, thinking about public engagement, why people do things, why people don't, and what leadership in our community looks like from somebody like Nathan, I think is really important to reflect on as we look for our next city manager. That's going to be really important, whatever our plan ends up looking like. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Tim.
I just attended a new committee I'm on, and it's not a city committee. So it isn't under us, so it's not adding to us, but it's a committee that's added to me, and it's the one with the downtown merchants. They asked for a counselor to join them, and so having been a business downtown, having gone through the flood, I have some things in common. Having lived downtown, I thought I probably was the best fit, so I joined him. They've drawn up a whole bunch of questions they're going to send out to the business community to ask how they want to deal with things. And so the meeting was just to kind of do that and get a survey out to them, and then bring in partners to talk about how they can improve the situation downtown. Because when you're talking to them and you're sitting among them, it's a little more dire than you think. So I'll keep reporting. We're going to be meeting every single week. because it's that important and it's not, it needs to happen that fast, something, because they're just dying on the vine. That's all.
Thanks, Jim. So. Adrian.
So I just wanted to provide an update. So through the Commission for Recovery and Resilience Group, John Copans is leading a new initiative called the Montpelier NeighborNet. If you all remember the old CANS network during the pandemic. So that's getting revitalized. And I'm part of that group, and we're putting together a toolkit to be a local leader in your neighborhood, to self-defined of what a neighbor looks like. But I wanted to invite you all, and I will send this out in email. We are having a kickoff on Saturday, June 7th from 2 to 4 at the College Green, where we will have some best practices in our neighborhoods in Montpelier on, how local leaders are supporting their neighbors through emergency response. We have some good ideas around like really fun things like barbecues and garage sales, but how do you do that as a neighborhood? Who are the leaders? How to get engaged in your neighborhood? What is a neighborhood? Very, very important in terms of emergency response, but also in the sense of community and loneliness. So get to know your neighbors, get to know the people next door, talk to them, know their names, know what they might need in case of an emergency. And so we are trying to build that in Montpelier to be a sustainable way of who we are and how we behave with each other and how we support each other in Montpelier. So once again, the kickoff is Saturday, June 7th from 2 to 4 at the College Green. And if it rains, it'll be at the Performing Arts Hub, which is across the street. So I would love for you all to join. You all live in a neighborhood in Montpelier. And so it's a good way to get out to meet your neighbors and also hear what's going on.
Can I give you a follow-up?
Yeah.
I want to give a kudos to Peter Kelman. We're already way ahead of everybody.
Oh, yeah, he is very active.
So Peter, thank you for that. You have already got you've had us on that for, I don't know, 2 years now. And we have a well-organized neighborhood because of him. So I just wanted to say thank you, Peter, and give you some recognition on that.
Okay. Terry.
No report tonight, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And no mayor's report tonight. City clerk?
No.
City manager?
Just real quick, I just want to get a little bit of clarity in scheduling for the strategic plan. I guess day, or just start the workshop. So we talked about a few dates at the last meeting. We talked about potentially June 4th. And maybe some of the other Wednesdays in June. And so I just wanted to get a sense of where people are at, if those dates might sound good. And I'm actually trying to pull my calendar now as we speak, so I can just kind of get a sense of, what that looks like.
June 4th, Wednesday?
It is.
Sooner the better.
So yeah, we've got June 4th and 18th because we've got meetings on the 11th and 25th.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm, for what it's worth, I have a work commitment on the evening of the 4th.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest the 18th because that'll give us a week off. Because we've got last week, this week, next week. If we do the 18th, and that means we at least have 1 week after between 2 blocks of 3 weeks in a row.
I'm just wondering, Jack, can we switch a meeting around, one of our regular meetings, move it back and move the other one up? Is that possible?
Kelly and I'll
To get it earlier? In other words, not where we're going to have a regular meeting earlier than the 18th, have that be the strategic one and move the regular meeting back, and something like that, just to get it going earlier, that's all.
Want to talk about that on Monday or
Right.
Tuesday?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
great.
We'll
Thank
talk
you.
about that on Tuesday at our regular weekly meeting.
Can I make just one quick suggestion about that? Just thinking about like getting started early, there might be other ways to do that. Like if Kelly, maybe you, I don't know, like drafted guiding questions for us or thought, like we could all be individually kind of doing some homework at home to come to a meeting like fully prepared to be like, these are the priorities, or you know what I mean? Just in some way to facilitate a faster process.
Kind of ready to go, but that's
Yeah.
all right.
All right. I think we're all set now. It is 9:32 PM and we are adjourned.